Hercule Poirot and Puzzle of the Emerald Labyrinth. Chapter 1. The Whisper of the Green Veil. Hercule Poirot sat in his impeccably tidy London flat, the morning sun casting precise rectangles of light across his polished mahogany desk. The aroma of his tisane lingered in the air, a ritual as sacred to him as the order he imposed on his surroundings. His fingers, delicate yet purposeful, sorted through the day's correspondence with the precision of a watchmaker. Bills, invitations, a letter from Captain Hastings waxing nostalgic about their last case, nothing out of the ordinary, until, that is, his eyes fell upon an envelope unlike the rest. It was of fine vellum, unadorned save for a wax seal embossed with a curious symbol, a labyrinth encircled by thorns. No return address, no signature, only his name inscribed in an elegant looping script, Monsieur Hercule Poirot. His moustache twitched with curiosity as he slit the envelope open, revealing a single sheet within. Monsieur Poirot. The emerald lies hidden in the heart of the labyrinth, but its brilliance blinds those who seek it. Verdant Hall holds the key, yet danger stalks its halls. Come, if you dare, and unravel the puzzle before the green veil falls. Time is short. A friend Poirot's grey eyes gleamed. A puzzle, a treasure, and a warning, all in one cryptic missive. Mon Dieu, he murmured, stroking his moustache. This is no ordinary invitation. It is a challenge to the little grey cells. He reread the letter, noting the deliberate vagueness. Verdant Hall, he recalled, was the ancestral estate of Lord Reginald Ashbourne, a reclusive aristocrat known for his obsession with rare gems. An emerald, a labyrinth, a veiled threat. This was a case worthy of Hercule Poirot. By noon, he had arranged his travel. A train to the countryside, followed by a motor car to the village of Ashbourne Vale, where Verdant Hall stood nestled among rolling hills. As the train rattled through fields dappled with autumn gold, Poirot's mind churned. Who was this friend? Why entrust him with such a secret? And what was this green veil? The questions danced like pieces of a jigsaw, incomplete but tantalizing. The motor car deposited him at the gates of Verdant Hall, as dusk painted the sky in hues of amber and violet. The estate loomed before him, a grand Georgian mansion flanked by sprawling gardens. Beyond the manicured lawns, Poirot glimpsed the dark silhouette of a hedge maze, its towering yews swallowing the last rays of sunlight. The labyrinth, no doubt, mentioned in the letter. He shivered not from the evening chill, but from the sense of enigma that clung to the place like mist. A butler, stiff as a tin soldier, greeted him at the door. "Monsieur Poirot, Lord Ashbourne is expecting you." The man's tone was polite, but guarded, his eyes darting as if wary of unseen listeners. Poirot followed him through a marble foyer, adorned with portraits of stern-faced Ashbournes, their gazes seeming to track his every step. Lord Reginald Ashbourne awaited in the drawing-room, a cavernous space lit by a roaring fire. He was a wiry man in his late 50s, with sharp cheekbones and eyes that flickered with nervous energy. His green velvet waistcoat, Poirot noted, bore a subtle embroidery of vines, a nod, perhaps, to the estate's verdant theme. "Monsieur Poirot, a pleasure," Lord Ashbourne's voice was warm, but his handshake was clammy. "I confess I was surprised when my secretary mentioned your visit. You've come about a matter of some delicacy, I presume." Poirot smiled, his demeanour as smooth as polished glass. "A matter, monsieur, of emeralds and labyrinths, if my information is correct. I have received a communication, anonymous yet most intriguing. It speaks of a treasure hidden within your estate and a danger that accompanies it." Lord Ashbourne's face paled, his fingers tightening around a glass of brandy. "An emerald? Here? Preposterous," he said too quickly. "Verdant Hall is merely a family home, not some pirate's trove. As for the maze, it's a folly, nothing more. A curiosity built by my great-grandfather. Yet," Poirot countered, his voice soft but piercing, "the letter was most specific. And I, Hercule Poirot, do not dismiss such specificity lightly. Tell me, who resides here with you? Who might know of this labyrinthine secret?" Ashbourne hesitated, then gestured towards the door. "You'll meet them at dinner. We have guests this weekend, a small gathering. My niece, Lady Evelyn, a botanist, Dr. Clara Thorne, Colonel Percival Blake, an old friend, and a few others. Harmless lot, really." Poirot's moustache curled ever so slightly. Harmless? He doubted it. The little grey cells were already at work, sensing the threads of deception woven into the air. As the butler announced dinner, Poirot followed his host, his eyes scanning the opulent surroundings. The emerald, the labyrinth, the green veil. The puzzle was only beginning, and Hercule Poirot was determined to unravel it. Chapter 2. Shadows on Verdant Hall. The dining room of Verdant Hall was a study in grandeur, its walls adorned with tapestries depicting pastoral scenes, their faded threads hinting at centuries of history. A chandelier, its crystals glinting like frozen tears, cast a warm glow over the long mahogany table set for 8. Hercule Poirot, seated to the right of Lord Reginald Ashbourne, observed the assembled guests with the keen eye of a jeweller inspecting a flawed gem. Each face, he knew, held secrets, and the anonymous letter's promise of an emerald, and danger lingered in his mind like a half-solved riddle. Lord Ashbourne, at the head of the table, introduced Poirot with a forced joviality. "Monsieur Hercule, Poirot, the renowned detective, graces us with his presence. A bit of a surprise, but a delightful one." His laugh was brittle, and Poirot noted the quick glance he shot toward his niece, Lady Evelyn Ashbourne. Lady Evelyn, a striking woman, in her late 20s, sat opposite Poirot. Her auburn hair was swept into an elegant chignon, and her emerald green gown seemed chosen to echo the estate's theme. Her smile was charming, but her eyes, sharp and calculating, betrayed a mind accustomed to getting what it wanted. Detective," she purred, raising a glass of claret. "How thrilling! Are we to be suspects in some grand mystery, Monsieur Poirot?" Poirot inclined his head, his moustache twitching. "Mademoiselle, in the presence of Hercule Poirot, every gathering is a potential mystery. But for now, I am merely a guest, observing the harmonies of this charming company." The other guests stirred, their reactions as varied as the courses being served. Dr. Clara Thorne, a wiry botanist with ink-stained fingers and a distracted air, barely looked up from her plate. Her tweed suit was out of place amid the formal, attire, and Poirot noted her habit of scribbling in a small notebook between bites. Colonel Percival Blake, a ruddy-faced man with a military bearing, grunted disapprovingly. Detectives poking about? Never liked 'em. Too much sniffing wear. They're not wanted. His voice carried the gravel of old battlefields, and his left hand, resting on the table, bore a faint scar. The remaining guests, a nervous young solicitor named Mr. Harold Wren, and a widowed dowager, Mrs. Beatrice Langley, offered polite smiles but little conversation. The final seat, Poirot learned, belonged to a guest who had yet to arrive, a certain Mr. Victor Grayson, described by Lord Ashbourne as a gemologist of some repute. As the soup course gave way to roasted pheasant, Poirot steered the conversation toward Verdant Hall's history. "This estate, Lord Ashbourne, it is most magnificent. The gardens, the maze, such features suggest a purpose beyond mere aesthetics, no?" Lord Ashbourne dabbed his lips with a napkin, his movements deliberate. "The maze? A whim of my great-grandfather, Sir Mortimer Ashbourne. He was fond of puzzles and eccentricities. It's a tangle of hedges, nothing more. The locals spin. Tales, of course, but they're nonsense." "Nonsense?" Lady Evelyn interjected, her tone sharp. "Uncle, you know the stories about the emerald. The villagers claim it's hidden in the maze, guarded by some ancient trick." She turned to Poirot, her eyes gleaming. "They say it's cursed, monsieur. Anyone who seeks it vanishes or worse." Colonel Blake snorted. "Poppycock! Cursed! Gems and hidden treasures, stuff of penny dreadfuls. If there's an emerald, it's probably some trinket Mortimer lost in a card game." Dr. Thorne looked up, her voice soft but firm. "The maze isn't just hedges. Its design is unusual. I've studied it. The patterns suggest a purpose, mathematical perhaps. It's not random." Her words hung in the air, drawing a frown from Lord Ashbourne. Poirot's fingers steepled beneath his chin. "Mathematical, you say? Most interesting, Madame Thorne. A labyrinth with a purpose. Perhaps to conceal or to protect." He let the question linger, noting the sudden tension in the room. Lady Evelyn's smile faltered, and Colonel Blake's hand tightened around his fork. The conversation shifted to mundane topics, weather, London gossip, but Poirot's attention wandered to the room itself. The tapestries, he noticed, featured recurring motifs of green stones and winding paths. A large window overlooked the gardens, where the maze loomed in the moonlight, its dark bulk seeming to pulse with secrets. He resolved to explore it at the earliest opportunity. The meal concluded with a dessert of poached pears, but the harmony Lord Ashbourne had hoped for unravelled. Lady Evelyn, her voice rising, accused Colonel Blake of meddling in her financial affairs. "You've no right to question my investments, Percival. Uncle, tell him to stop prying." The Colonel's retort was sharp, hinting at debts and reckless spending. Dr. Thorne, meanwhile, slipped her notebook into her pocket, her eyes darting toward the door. As the guests dispersed, Poirot lingered, his gaze settling on Lord Ashbourne. "A most illuminating evening, monsieur. Your guests, they are not without their passions, no?" Ashbourne sighed, rubbing his temples. "Family and friends, Monsieur Poirot, they bring complications. But I assure you, there's no mystery. Here, just human nature." Poirot smiled enigmatically. "Me human nature, Lord Ashbourne, is the greatest labyrinth of all. And I, Hercule Poirot, am its cartographer." With a polite bow, he retired to his room, his mind already mapping the shadows cast by Verdant Hall's inhabitants. The emerald, the maze, the letter, the threads were converging, and he would follow them to their heart. Chapter 3. The Maze's First Secret. The morning air at Verdant Hall carried a crisp bite, laced with the scent of dew and freshly turned earth. Hercule Poirot, clad in a meticulously tailored overcoat, stood at the edge of the estate's infamous hedge maze, his eyes tracing its towering yew walls. The labyrinth loomed before him, a green fortress under a sky bruised with clouds. The anonymous letter's words echoed in his mind. The emerald lies hidden in the heart of the labyrinth. If there was truth to the riddle, the maze held the key, and Poirot was determined to unlock its secrets. He adjusted his Homburg hat and stepped onto the gravel path leading into the maze, his polished shoes crunching softly. The entrance was framed by 2 stone urns, their surfaces weathered but etched with faint, spiralling patterns that caught his eye. "Curieux," he murmured, running a gloved finger over the carvings. They resembled the labyrinthine seal and the letter, a detail too precise to be coincidence. His little grey cells hummed with anticipation. The maze's interior was a world of shadows and whispers. The yew hedges, trimmed with surgical precision, rose 10 feet high, their dense foliage swallowing sound and light. The path twisted sharply, offering no glimpse of what lay beyond. Poirot proceeded methodically, noting each turn and dead end, his mind constructing a mental map. "Order and method," he said to himself. "These are the tools to conquer chaos." After several minutes, he reached a small clearing where a stone bench sat beside a circular flagstone platform. Embedded in the platform were more carvings, angular symbols that seemed to form a sequence. Poirot knelt, his eyes narrowing. A code, perhaps, or a guide. He sketched the symbols in a small notebook, suspecting they were tied to Dr. Thorne's comment about the maze's mathematical design. Before he could ponder further, a voice interrupted his thoughts. "Lost already, Monsieur Poirot." It was Tompkins, the estate's grizzled groundskeeper, emerging from a side path with a pair of pruning shears in hand. His weathered face was unreadable, but his eyes held a glint of wariness. "Not lost, Monsieur Tompkins," Poirot replied, rising gracefully. "Merely exploring. This maze, it is most remarkable. You must know its secrets, non?" Tompkins shrugged, his shears glinting in the dim light. "I've been tending it for 30 years. It's a beast. Miles of paths, tricks at every turn. Old Sir Mortimer, he built it to keep folks out, not to wander in. Locals say it guards something, but I don't hold with ghost stories." "Ghost stories?" Poirot's moustache twitched. "Or tales of emeralds, perhaps?" The groundskeeper's jaw tightened. "You've heard the gossip, then?" "Aye, they talk of a gem hidden by Sir Mortimer. Some say it's in the maze's heart, others that it's a fool's errand. All I know is people who go poking about don't always come out smiling." He turned to leave, then paused. "Mind the paths, sir. They've a way of shifting." Poirot watched him go, his mind cataloguing the groundskeeper's guarded tone. Shifting paths? A metaphor, or something more? He resumed his exploration, following a narrow corridor that descended slightly, the air growing cooler. At its end, he found a stone wall, its surface smooth except for a single fist-sized indentation. Pressing it, he heard a faint click, and a panel slid aside, revealing a shallow compartment. Inside lay a brass key, its head shaped like a coiled vine. Poirot's fingers closed around it, his pulse quickening. "The first secret," he whispered, but before he could examine it further, a piercing scream shattered the maze's silence, echoing from the direction of Verdant Hall. He slipped the key into his pocket and retraced his steps, moving with surprising agility for a man of his fastidious nature. Emerging from the maze, he saw a cluster of figures on the lawn. Lord Ashbourne, Lady Evelyn, and Colonel Blake, their faces pale. Mrs. Langley, the dowager, was wringing her hands, her voice trembling. "It came from the house. Someone's hurt, I'm sure of it." Poirot's eyes swept the group, noting Dr. Thorne's absence. "Where is Madame Thorne?" he asked sharply. Lord Ashbourne shook his head. "She was in the library earlier, studying some old maps. I don't know." Without hesitation, Poirot strode toward the mansion, the others trailing behind. The scream, the key, the maze's carvings, the threads of the puzzle were multiplying, and he sensed the emerald's shadow looming larger. As he crossed the ague threshold of Verdant Hall, his mind was already at work, piecing together the labyrinth of motives and secrets that awaited within. Chapter 4. The Vanishing Guest. The echo of the scream still lingered in Hercule Poirot's mind as he hurried through the marble foyer of Verdant Hall, his polished shoes clicking against the floor with purposeful rhythm. The brass key, concealed in his pocket, felt heavy with promise, but the immediate mystery demanded his attention. A scream, he knew, was rarely without consequence, and the absence of Dr. Clara Thorne at the scene sharpened his instincts. The little grey cells were alight, sensing the first true fracture in the facade of Verdant Hall's civility. Lord Ashbourne, Lady Evelyn, Colonel Blake, and Mrs. Langley followed close behind, their faces a gallery of unease. The butler, Mr. Grayson, the gemologist, had joined them, his late arrival to the estate marked by a dishevelled appearance and a murmured apology about a delayed train. Poirot noted his nervous fidgeting, but pressed forward, leading the group to the library where Dr. Thorne had last been seen. The library was a cavernous room, its walls lined with leather-bound tomes and lit by tall windows that framed the distant maze. A heavy oak table stood at its centre, strewn with maps and papers, but Dr. Thorne was nowhere to be found. Poirot's eyes swept the scene, cataloguing details. An overturned ink bottle, a quill pen snapped in two, and a chair pushed askew, as if in haste. "Mon Dieu," he murmured, "this is not the work of an orderly departure." "Clara!" Lord Ashbourne called, his voice cracking. "Where are you?" The silence that answered was oppressive, broken only by Mrs. Langley's stifled sob. Poirot knelt beside the table, examining a small notebook half hidden beneath a map. Its pages were filled with Dr. Thorne's cramped handwriting. Sketches of plants, geometric diagrams, and cryptic phrases like the green heart and solstice alignment. One page bore a rough drawing of the maze, with a star marking its centre. He slipped the notebook into his coat, aware of Lady Evelyn's sharp gaze on him. Perhaps she wandered into the gardens? Mr. Wren, the solicitor, suggested timidly. She was preoccupied with her studies. Or she's playing some fool prank, Colonel Blake growled, though his bluster lacked conviction. Damned odd woman, always scribbling. Poirot rose, his expression unreadable. A prank, Colonel? Nah, I think not. A scream, a disarrayed room, and now a missing guest. These are not the signs of jest. We must search the house, and quickly. The group dispersed under Poirot's direction, checking bedrooms, parlours, and even the servants' quarters. Poirot himself examined Dr. Thorne's guest room, finding her tweed jacket still hanging in the wardrobe and her botanical satchel untouched. A single item caught his eye. A pressed leaf, tucked into a frame on the bedside table, its veins forming, a pattern eerily similar to the maze's layout. Curieux, he whispered, pocketing the leaf for later study. As the search continued, Poirot gathered the guests in the drawing-room to probe their accounts of the morning. Lord Ashbourne admitted to a brief conversation with Dr. Thorne about the estate's history, but claimed she seemed distracted. Lady Evelyn said she'd seen her near the library, carrying a bundle of papers, but offered no more. Colonel Blake insisted he'd been in the billiard room, though his evasive glance suggested otherwise. Mr. Grayson, still flustered, claimed ignorance, having only just arrived. Mrs. Langley and Mr. Wren had been in the conservatory, discussing orchids, a flimsy alibi, Poirot noted given the timing. The most revealing moment came when Poirot pressed Lady Evelyn. Mademoiselle, you mentioned Dr. Thorne's papers. Did you see their contents? Perhaps something valuable? Her lips tightened, a flicker of defiance in her eyes. Valuable? They were just her usual nonsense, plants and patterns. Clara's, obsessed with that maze, always muttering about its secrets. I didn't care to pry. Poirot's moustache curled slightly. And yet, mademoiselle, you observe much. Tell me, when did you last see her precisely? An hour before the scream, she snapped, then softened her tone. She was heading toward the library, that's all I know. The interrogation was cut short by Tompkins, the groundskeeper, bursting into the room. Sir, he gasped, addressing Lord Ashbourne. I found something by the maze entrance. A scarf, silk, like the one Dr. Thorne wears. Poirot followed, Tompkins to the spot where a green silk scarf lay crumpled in the grass, its edge stained with mud. The maze loomed nearby, its dark paths silent but ominous. This is hers, Lord Ashbourne confirmed, his voice hollow. But why here? Poirot's gaze lingered on the maze. The scarf, the scream, the notebook, the key, each was a thread in the tapestry of the emerald's mystery. Dr. Thorne's disappearance was no accident, he was certain, but whether she was victim or conspirator remained unclear. We must proceed with caution, he said, his voice steady. The labyrinth, it seems, is not only of hedges, but of human motives, and I, Hercule Poirot, will unravel them both. Chapter 5. Footprints in the Dew. The dawn broke over Verdant Hall with a reluctant glow, the sky streaked with pale gold and grey. Hercule Poirot, ever an early riser, stood on the terrace overlooking the gardens, his breath visible in the chill morning air. The maze, a dark silhouette against the horizon, seemed to pulse with secrets, its paths calling to him like the lines of an unsolved equation. Dr. Clara Thorne's disappearance, the silk scarf, the brass key in his pocket, and the cryptic notebook. All were pieces of a puzzle that demanded his attention. But first he resolved to revisit the maze, where the groundskeeper's warning of shifting paths lingered in his mind. Descending to the lawn, Poirot's sharp eyes caught a glimmer in the grass. A trail of footprints, faint but distinct, etched in the dew. They led from the terrace toward the maze's entrance, their irregular spacing suggesting haste. "Mon Dieu," he murmured, his moustache twitching. "A clue, perhaps, or a trap?" He followed the trail, noting the size and shape of the prints. Small, likely a woman's, though the heel marks were blurred, as if deliberately scuffed. The footprints vanished at the maze's entrance, where the gravel path erased all trace. Poirot paused, his gloved hand brushing the stone urns that flanked the opening. The labyrinth's yew walls loomed, their shadows swallowing the morning light. He stepped inside, retracing his path from the previous day, the brass key a reassuring weight in his pocket. The maze was silent save for the rustle of leaves, but Poirot's senses were alert, attuned to the faintest anomaly. After several turns, he reached a new clearing, one he had not encountered before. At its centre stood an ancient sundial, its bronze face weathered but intricate, engraved with Roman numerals and a Latin inscription, Tempus Veritatem Revelat. Time reveals the truth. Radiating from the sundial were stone tiles, each etched with a riddle in archaic script. Poirot knelt, transcribing the first, "Seek the heart where shadows meet, beneath the gaze of heaven's seat. Curieux," he said softly. The riddle hinted at the maze's centre, perhaps the heart, where the emerald lay, but the sundial itself drew his attention. Its shadow, cast by the rising sun, pointed to a specific tile, one marked with a spiral. Pressing it, Poirot heard a faint grind, but nothing moved. He made a mental note to return with Dr. Thorne's notebook, suspecting its diagrams might align with the sundial's clues. As he stood, a rustle in the hedges made him freeze. "Who is there?" he called, his voice sharp. No answer came, but the sound of retreating footsteps confirmed his suspicion. He was not alone. Moving swiftly, he followed the noise, navigating the maze's twists until he emerged near the entrance. There, standing on the lawn, was Colonel Percival Blake, his face flushed and his coat dusted with leaves. "Colonel," Poirot said, his tone deceptively mild. "An early stroll, non? Or do you too seek the secrets of the labyrinth?" Blake's eyes narrowed, his scar twitching. "Just clearing my head, Poirot. This place, too many shadows for my liking. Heard about Thorne's scarf. Thought I'd have a look." "Indeed." Poirot's gaze flicked to Blake's boots, which were damp, but bore no trace of the dew-soaked grass. "And did you find anything of interest?" "Nothing," Blake said, curtly, turning toward the house. "Waste of time, this maze. You'd do better to question that niece of Ashbourne's. She's got debts piling up, reason enough to chase fairy tales about emeralds." Poirot's moustache curled. "A most generous observation, Colonel, but I prefer facts to speculation. Tell me, where were you when the scream was heard yesterday?" Blake stiffened. "Billiard room, like I said. Ask Wren, he saw me there." He stalked off, leaving Poirot to ponder the exchange. Blake's presence in the maze was no coincidence, and his mention of Lady Evelyn's debts added another thread to the tapestry of motives. Returning to the sundial, Poirot examined the footprints again in his mind. They were too deliberate, too conveniently placed. A distraction, perhaps, meant to lure him into the maze, or away from the house. The scream, the scarf, and now these prints suggested a carefully staged drama. But by whom? Dr. Thorne, if she was alive, or another player in this verdant game. As he made his way back to Verdant Hall, the sun climbed higher, burning away the dew. The footprints would soon vanish, but Poirot's resolve only sharpened. The maze had yielded its first secret, the key, and now the sundial's riddles promised more. "Patience," he whispered to himself, "and the little grey cells will illuminate the path." With Dr. Thorne's notebook and the maze's clues in hand, he was one step closer to the emerald and the truth. Chapter 6. The Emerald's Curse. The afternoon light filtered through the tall windows of Verdant Hall's drawing-room, casting long shadows across the Persian rugs. Hercule Poirot sat in a high-backed chair, his hands folded neatly, his eyes fixed on Lord Reginald Ashbourne. The air was thick with unspoken tension, the mystery of Dr. Clara Thorne's disappearance, and the maze's cryptic clues weighing heavily on the household. The brass key and Dr. Thorne's notebook, safely tucked in Poirot's pocket, were pieces of a puzzle that grew more intricate by the hour. But now Poirot sought to unravel a different thread, the legend of the emerald itself. Lord Ashbourne, Poirot began, his voice smooth as polished marble. "You have been most hospitable, but there is a matter we must discuss. The emerald, the one spoken of in whispers, the one tied to your family's maze. I sense you know more than you have shared. Tell me of this curse." Ashbourne's face paled, his fingers tightening around the armrests of his chair. A curse? Monsieur Poirot, surely you don't believe in such nonsense. It's a story, nothing more. A tale to amuse villagers." Poirot's moustache twitched, a faint smile playing beneath it. Nonsense, perhaps, to some. But to Hercule Poirot, every story has a kernel of truth. And this story, it seems, has roots deep in Verdant Hall. Speak, monsieur, or the shadows of this tale will grow longer. Ashbourne sighed, rising to pour, himself a brandy from a crystal decanter. "Very well," he said, his voice low. "The emerald is real, or was. My great-grandfather, Sir Mortimer Ashbourne, acquired it during his travels in India, a flawless stone the size of a quail's egg, said to have been pried from a sacred statue. He brought it here, but with it came misfortune. Misfortune?" Poirot leaned forward, his grey eyes sharp. "Deaths," Ashbourne admitted, his gaze distant. "Sir Mortimer's brother drowned in the lake. His wife fell ill and never recovered. Servants vanished without trace. The villagers began to whisper of a curse, claiming the emerald demanded blood. Mortimer, obsessed with protecting it, built the maze. He hid the gem, or so the story goes, and left no map. Only riddles." Poirot's fingers steepled beneath his chin. "And you, Lord Ashbourne, do you believe this curse?" Ashbourne shook his head, but his eyes betrayed doubt. "I believe in greed, Monsieur Poirot. The emerald's value would tempt anyone, curse or no curse. If it exists, it's caused enough trouble without supernatural aid." Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of Mrs. Langley. Her face flushed with agitation. "Lord Ashbourne, the library! I found something!" Old records tucked behind a shelf. They mention the emerald." She clutched a leather-bound ledger, its pages yellowed and brittle. Poirot took the ledger, his gloved hands careful as he opened it. The entries, dated over a century ago, chronicled Sir Mortimer's descent into paranoia. One passage stood out. "The stone is safe, locked, in the heart of my labyrinth, guarded by time and shadow. Let none seek it, lest they join the damned." Another page listed incidents: servants disappearing, a fire in the west wing, a guest found dead in the maze, his face frozen in terror. "Most illuminating," Poirot murmured, closing the ledger. "This curse, it seems, is a convenient cloak for human misdeeds. But whose hand weaves it now?" As Mrs. Langley retreated, Poirot's thoughts turned to Dr. Thorne. Her notebook, with its references to the Green Heart, suggested she had been chasing the emerald's trail. Was her disappearance a result of the curse, or a calculated move by another player? The footprints in the dew, the sundial's riddles, and now these records pointed to a conspiracy rooted in Verdant Hall's past. The room darkened suddenly, not from clouds, but from a power failure that plunged the house into gloom. Gasps echoed from the hall, followed by the clatter of a dropped tray. Poirot remained calm, his mind racing. "A coincidence, perhaps," he said to Ashbourne, who fumbled for a match, "or a reminder that danger is near." As candles were lit, casting flickering shadows, Poirot's resolve hardened. The emerald's curse was a story, yes, but one wielded like a weapon. The maze, the key, the missing botanist, all were part of a labyrinth not just of hedges but of lies. "Fear not, Lord Ashbourne," he said, his voice steady. "The little grey cells, they thrive in darkness, and they will find the light." With the ledger in hand and the maze's secrets beckoning, Poirot prepared to delve deeper, sensing that the next clue, or the next crime, was not far away. Chapter 7. A Cipher in the Rose Garden. The morning after the blackout, Verdant Hall buzzed with unease, its inhabitants moving like chess pieces on a board shadowed by suspicion. Hercule Poirot, undeterred by the previous night's disruption, stood in the rose garden, a fragrant oasis nestled between the mansion and the looming maze. The air was heavy with the scent of blooms, their petals glistening with dew, but Poirot's attention was fixed on a discovery that had drawn him here, a cryptic message hidden among the roses that might unlock the mystery of Dr. Clara Thorne's disappearance and the emerald's whereabouts. He had found the clue by chance, or so it seemed, while inspecting the garden's paths. Beneath a thorny bush, half buried in the soil, lay a small metal tin, rusted but intact. Inside was a folded paper, its edges frayed, bearing a sequence of numbers and symbols in Dr. Thorne's distinctive hand. 3 to 7 Mas 12, LRC Jar Solstice Star. Beside it was a sketch of a rose, its petals marked with tiny dots forming a constellation-like pattern. Poirot's moustache twitched as he studied the note, sensing it was no accident that it lay here, so close to the maze. "Mon Dieu," he murmured, "a cipher, and one tied to the labyrinth, I suspect." The numbers and directions, left, right, centre, suggested a path through the maze, while the solstice star echoed the sundial's riddles from the previous day. But the rose sketch intrigued him most. He examined the nearest bush, its blooms of vivid crimson, and noticed faint scratches on a stem, forming a sequence. V2. A code, perhaps, or a marker left by Dr. Thorne. Poirot's contemplation was interrupted by the arrival of Captain Arthur Hastings, his old friend and occasional companion, who had arrived at Verdant Hall that morning at Poirot's urgent summons. Hastings, with his earnest demeanour and military stride, looked out of place among the roses, his face creased with concern. "Poirot, old chap, this place gives me the creeps," Hastings said, glancing at the maze. "A missing botanist, a cursed emerald, and now you're poking about in the shrubbery. What's the game?" Poirot smiled, handing him the tin. "The game, mon ami, is one of patterns and deception. This cipher, I believe, is Dr. Thorne's work. A guide to the maze's heart, where the emerald may lie. But we must decode it, and for that we need the maze itself." Together they returned to the library, where Dr. Thorne's notebook and the old ledger from Sir Mortimer's time awaited. Poirot spread out a map of the maze, one of several Dr. Thorne had been studying before her disappearance. Its paths formed a dizzying spiral, but Poirot's keen eye traced a pattern. The layout resembled a logarithmic curve with key junctions, marked by symbols matching those on the sundial and the rose garden tin. "Observe, Hastings," Poirot said, pointing to the map. "The cipher 3712 may indicate turns at specific junctions. Left, right, centre could guide us through the maze's branches, and the solstice star. It aligns with the sundial's shadow at noon, perhaps revealing a hidden path." Hastings frowned, scratching his head. "Jolly clever, but why leave it in the garden? If Thorne's in trouble, why not just tell someone?" Poirot's eyes gleamed. "Because, mon ami, she either could not or would not. Dr. Thorne is a scientist, precise and secretive. This cipher is her insurance, hidden where only a keen mind would look. But someone else may know of it, and that someone may have silenced her." Their work was cut short by a shout from the lawn. Rushing to the window, they saw Tompkins, the groundskeeper, holding a blood-stained glove near the maze's entrance. The guests were gathering, their voices a mix of fear and accusation. Poirot and Hastings joined them, Poirot's gaze fixed. On the glove, a man's leather with a faint monogram. "P.B., Colonel Blake's, I presume," Poirot said, turning to the colonel, whose face reddened. "Mine, yes," Blake stammered. "But I lost it days ago. Someone's playing a blasted trick." Lady Evelyn's laugh was sharp. "A trick, Percival? Or evidence? You were snooping in the maze yesterday, weren't you?" Blake's retort was cut off by Poirot's raised hand. "Enough. This glove, like the scarf, is a distraction, or a warning. We must focus on the maze, for it holds the answers." He pocketed the cipher and the glove, his mind racing. The rose garden's clue, the sundial, the key, all pointed to the labyrinth's heart. But the blood on the glove suggested time was running out. As the group dispersed, Poirot whispered to Hastings, "We return to the maze at noon, when the solstice star aligns. Bring your courage, mon ami, for the labyrinth guards more than emeralds. It guards the truth." Chapter 8. The Midnight Intruder. The clock in Verdant Hall's grand foyer struck midnight, its chimes reverberating through the silent corridors like a warning. Hercule Poirot, sleepless and alert, sat in his guest room, the flickering light of a single candle illuminating Dr. Clara Thorne's notebook and the cipher from the rose garden. The blood-stained glove, the sundial's riddles, and the brass key lay before him, each a fragment of the labyrinthine mystery that consumed his thoughts. The planned exploration of the maze at noon with Captain Hastings was hours away, but Poirot's instincts told him the night held secrets too urgent to ignore. A faint creak from the hallway snapped him to attention. Extinguishing the candle, he moved soundlessly to the door, his ears straining. The soft shuffle of footsteps, deliberate and cautious, passed his room, descending the staircase towards the ground floor. "An intruder," Poirot whispered, his moustache twitching with anticipation. "Or perhaps one of our guests playing a dangerous game." Clad in a dark dressing gown, Poirot slipped into the corridor, his movements as precise as a cat's. The moonlight streaming through tall windows cast eerie shadows, transforming the mansion into a maze of its own. He followed the sound, descending the stairs and gliding past the portraits of stern-faced Ashbournes, their eyes seeming to track his progress. In the foyer, he glimpsed a figure, a silhouette cloaked in a long coat, moving toward the library. The intruder paused, glancing back, and Poirot pressed himself into an alcove, his heart steady despite the thrill of the chase. The figure entered the library, leaving the door ajar. Poirot crept closer, peering through the gap. The intruder was rifling through the papers on the oak table where Dr. Thorne's maps had been left. A glint of moonlight revealed a woman's hand, adorned with a sapphire ring. Poirot's mind raced. Lady Evelyn wore such a ring, but so did Mrs. Langley. Before he could act, the figure turned, and Poirot caught a glimpse of fabric. A silk gown, its hem torn as if caught on something sharp. He stepped forward, his voice cutting through the silence. "Madame, your nocturnal wanderings are most illuminating. May I ask what you seek?" The figure gasped, dropping a map, and bolted for the French doors leading to the gardens. Poirot gave chase, but the intruder was swift, vanishing into the night. He stopped at the doors, his breath visible in the cold air, and noticed a scrap of silk caught on the latch, emerald green, matching Lady Evelyn's gown from dinner. Returning to the library, Poirot examined the dropped map. It was one of Dr. Thorne's, marked with a red circle around the maze's centre and the word Keystone. The cipher's numbers, 3, 7 to 12, were scrawled in the margin, suggesting the intruder knew of its significance. "Curieux," Poirot murmured, pocketing the silk scrap. "A thief, a spy, or a conspirator?" The next morning at breakfast, Poirot observed the guests with renewed scrutiny. Lady Evelyn, radiant in a new gown, chatted lightly with Mr. Grayson, the gemologist, but her fingers toyed nervously with her sapphire ring. Mrs. Langley, pale and withdrawn, avoided Poirot's gaze. Colonel Blake, still bristling over the glove, muttered about damned snoops. Lord Ashbourne, meanwhile, seemed distracted, his eyes darting to the windows overlooking the maze. Poirot cornered Lady Evelyn as the group dispersed. "Mademoiselle," he said, producing the silk scrap, "this was found last night in the library. It matches your gown, non? Care to explain your midnight errand?" Her eyes widened, then narrowed. "You're mistaken, Monsieur Poirot. I was in my room all night. Besides, green silk is hardly unique." She leaned closer, her voice dropping. "If you must know, I've been receiving notes, threatening ones. Someone claims I owe them money, tied to that wretched emerald. I thought the library might hold answers." "Blackmail?" Poirot's tone was sceptical. "And yet you did not inform me," the detective. "Most curious." "I can handle my own affairs," she snapped, then softened. "Please don't tell Uncle, he's worried enough." Poirot nodded, but his mind was elsewhere. The intruder's actions, the silk, Lady Evelyn's story, all pointed to a deeper game. The library's map, with its keystone note, suggested the maze's heart was near. As noon approached, Poirot prepared to enter the labyrinth with Hastings, the cipher and key in hand. The midnight intruder had revealed one truth. Someone else was racing to claim the emerald, and they would stop at nothing to reach it first. Chapter 9. The Labyrinth's Heart. The noon sun hung high over Verdant Hall, its light barely penetrating the dense yew walls of the maze, as Hercule Poirot and Captain Arthur Hastings ventured into its depths, armed with Dr. Clara Thorne's cipher, 3712, left, right, centre, and the brass key from the maze's hidden compartment. Poirot moved with purpose, his mental map of the labyrinth guiding their steps. The silk scrap from the midnight intruder, the blood-stained glove, and the sundial's riddles swirled in his mind, converging on a single goal: the maze's heart, where the emerald was said to lie. Yet the air was thick with foreboding, as if the labyrinth itself resisted their intrusion. "Jolly oppressive, this place," Hastings muttered, wiping his brow as they navigated a sharp turn. "Feels like it's watching us, Poirot. Sure you've got that cipher right?" Poirot's moustache twitched. "Patience, mon ami. The maze is a puzzle, and puzzles yield to order and method. The cipher is our compass, and the key our destination." He paused at a junction, consulting the cipher. 3 turns left, 7 right, 12 centre. Here, we go right. The path twisted and doubled back, the hedges closing in like silent sentinels. After what felt like an eternity, they reached the sundial clearing from Poirot's earlier exploration. Its shadow, sharp in the midday light, pointed to the spiral-marked tile. Poirot knelt, reciting the sundial's riddle. "Seek the heart where shadows meet, beneath the gaze of heaven's seat." He pressed the tile, and this time a low rumble echoed as a section of the path slid open, revealing a stone staircase, descending into darkness. Hastings whistled. "Good Lord, Poirot! You've done it!" "Not yet, Hastings," Poirot cautioned, producing a small torch from his coat. "The heart is near, but danger is nearer." They descended, the air growing, cool and damp. At the bottom, a narrow tunnel led to a circular chamber, its walls carved with labyrinthine patterns. At its centre stood a stone pedestal, and atop it a locked iron box, its surface etched with a vine motif, matching the brass key. Poirot inserted the key, turning it with a satisfying click. The box opened to reveal nothing. No emerald, only a single shard of green crystal, its edges jagged, as if broken from a larger stone. Poirot's eyes narrowed, his fingers tracing the shard. "A fragment," he murmured. "The emerald, it seems, is elsewhere, or never was." Hastings groaned. "A wild goose chase, then? All this for a bit of glass? Non, mon ami, Poirot said, pocketing the shard. This is a clue, not a conclusion. The shard proves the emerald existed, but someone has moved it, or hidden it better. The question is who? Their discussion was cut short by the sound of footsteps above. Poirot doused the torch, pulling Hastings into the shadows. A figure entered the chamber. Colonel Percival Blake, his face grim, a pistol glinting in his hand. "Damn it!" he muttered, seeing the open box. "Too late!" Poirot stepped forward, his voice calm but commanding. "Colonel Blake, your presence here is most revealing. Care to explain why you seek the emerald with a weapon?" Blake started, his pistol wavering. "Poirot, I'm not after the emerald. I was following someone. Saw Lady Evelyn sneaking about, thought she was up to no good. This maze, it's a trap, I tell you." "Indeed?" Poirot's gaze was piercing. "Yet you come armed and alone. A curious protector, non?" Before Blake could respond, a shout echoed from the maze above, followed by the sound of running feet. The colonel bolted, leaving Poirot and Hastings to ascend. Emerging into the clearing, they found the guests gathered on the lawn, summoned by Lord Ashbourne. Lady Evelyn was accusing Mr. Grayson, the gemologist, of tampering with her jewellery, while Mrs. Langley wailed about cursed grounds. Dr. Thorne's absence hung over them like a spectre. Poirot clutched the shard, his mind racing. The empty box, Blake's armed intrusion, the chaos among the guests, all suggested the emerald was still in play, hidden not in the maze, but in plain sight. "The labyrinth's heart is a deception," he whispered to Hastings. "The true prize lies elsewhere, and someone here knows where. We must watch, mon ami, for the next move will be desperate." As the group returned to the house, Poirot's little grey cells worked furiously, weaving the threads of the cipher, the shard, and the intruder's silk into a pattern only he could see. The game was far from over. Chapter 10. The Botanist's Return. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across Verdant Hall's lawns, the maze a silent sentinel in the distance. Hercule Poirot stood in the drawing-room, the emerald shard from the maze's heart glinting. In his hand, its fractured surface a mocking reminder of the elusive prize. The chaos of the morning, Colonel Blake's armed intrusion, the empty iron box, and the guests' escalating accusations, had left the household on edge. Yet Poirot's mind was a beacon of order, piecing together the labyrinth of clues. Dr. Clara Thorne's cipher, the blood-stained glove, the midnight intruder's silk, and now the shard. The emerald remained hidden, but the sudden return of a missing player was about to shift the game. A commotion at the front door drew Poirot and Captain Hastings to the foyer. There, dishevelled and pale, stood Dr. Clara Thorne, her tweed suit torn and her eyes wild with exhaustion. Lord Ashbourne gasped, rushing to her side. "Clara! Thank God! Where have you been?" The guests gathered, their reactions a mix of relief and suspicion. Lady Evelyn's lips tightened. Colonel Blake's hand hovered near his pocket, and Mr. Grayson, the gemologist, stared as if seeing a ghost. Poirot, however, remained composed, his grey eyes studying Thorne's every move. "Dr. Thorne," he said, his voice measured, "your absence has caused much concern. Perhaps you will enlighten us as to your adventure?" Thorne sank into a chair, accepting a glass of water from Mrs. Langley. "I was trapped," she said, her voice hoarse, "in the maze. There's a hidden passage beneath the sundial, clearing. I was exploring, following my notes, when the entrance closed behind me. It took days to find a way out." Hastings frowned. "Days? But it's only been 2 days, and you look half-starved. Why didn't you call for help?" "The passage was soundproof," Thorn replied, avoiding his gaze. "I found a tunnel leading to an old cellar, but it was a maze of its own. I only escaped this morning, through a grate near the lake." Poirot's moustache twitched. Her story was plausible, yet details nagged at him. Her clean hands, the absence of mud on her boots, despite the damp cellar she described. "Most remarkable, Madame Che," he said. "And your notebook, with its ciphers and sketches of the Green Heart, did it guide you to this passage?" Thorn's eyes flickered. "My notebook? I lost it in the maze. But yes, I was studying the maze's design. It's not just hedges. It's a mathematical construct built to hide something. I thought it was the emerald." Poirot produced the notebook from his pocket, watching her reaction. "This notebook, perhaps? Found in the library where you were last seen. Curious, non, that you did not mention it." Her face flushed. "I was confused, Monsieur Poirot. Trapped alone. It's a blur." Sensing her unease, Poirot changed tack. "Let us investigate this passage. It may hold answers." He led the group to the maze, Thorn guiding them to the sundial clearing. She pointed to a stone tile, which, when pressed, revealed the staircase Poirot and Hastings had found earlier. Descending, they entered the tunnel, its walls damp and lined with roots. At its end was a small chamber, not a cellar, but a storage room filled with crates of rare plants, orchids, ferns, and strange luminescent vines. "Mon Dieu," Poirot murmured, examining a crate labelled Thorn Botanical Research. "These are not mere decorations. They are valuable, non? Perhaps as valuable as an emerald." Thorn stiffened. "They're for my work. Rare specimens, nothing more. I stored them here to protect them." Colonel Blake snorted. "Protect them or hide them? Smells like smuggling to me." Lady Evelyn's laugh was sharp. "Clara, darling, are you running a black market in weeds? No wonder you vanished." Poirot raised a hand, silencing the accusations. "Enough. Dr. Thorn, your story raises questions. The plants, the passage, your convenient return, all suggest a motive beyond the emerald. Were you seeking it or protecting something else?" Thorn's eyes darted to the crates, then back to Poirot. "I swear, I only wanted to understand. The maze, the emerald, it's a distraction." As they returned to the house, Poirot's mind churned. Thorn's return was no accident, and her plants hinted at a dual conspiracy, one for the emerald, another for her own gain. The shard, the cipher, and the passage were pieces of a larger puzzle, and someone, Thorn or another, was still playing a dangerous game. "Hastings," he whispered, "we must watch her closely. The botanist has returned, but the truth remains hidden in the labyrinth." Chapter 11. The Masquerade of Motives. The grand ballroom of Verdant Hall shimmered under the glow of a dozen chandeliers, their crystals refracting light into a kaleidoscope of colours. Lord Reginald Ashbourne, in a bid to dispel the pall of suspicion hanging over the estate, had declared a masquerade ball, a night of revelry to soothe frayed nerves. Yet Hercule Poirot, standing at the edge of the room in a black domino mask and a tailored evening suit, saw through the facade. The return of Dr. Clara Thorne, the emerald shard, the hidden passage filled with rare plants, all pointed to a web of motives as tangled as the maze outside. Tonight he resolved to unravel it, using the anonymity of the masquerade to observe and probe. The guests swirled across the dance floor, their faces obscured by elaborate masks. Peacock feathers, gilded lions, and jewelled harlequins. Captain Hastings, at Poirot's side in a simple columbine mask, whispered, "Dash it, Poirot! How do you keep track of anyone's in this get-up? Could be anyone plotting behind those masks." Poirot's moustache twitched beneath his mask. "Mon ami, the mask conceals the face, but not the heart. Watch the gestures, the voices, the alliances. They betray the truth." His eyes scanned the room, noting Lady Evelyn's graceful glide in a green feathered mask, her sapphire ring glinting as she danced with Mr. Grayson, the gemologist. Colonel Blake, in a military-style mask, stood near the punch bowl, his scar visible despite his disguise. Dr. Thorne, pale but composed in a silver botanical mask, hovered near the terrace doors, her gaze darting nervously. Lord Ashbourne, dressed as a Venetian noble, opened the ball with a toast, "To Verdant Hall, and to secrets unveiled." His words, meant to be jovial, landed heavily, and Poirot noted the flicker of unease in his eyes. Slipping into the crowd, Poirot adopted the persona of a mysterious stranger, his French accent softened to blend in. He approached Mrs. Langley, whose butterfly mask trembled as she sipped champagne. "Madame," he said, bowing, "you seem troubled. Is it the maze or the company?" She started, then laughed nervously. "Oh, just the stories, sir. That emerald. It's brought nothing but trouble. I overheard Clara, Dr. Thorne, talking about it before she vanished. Said it was closer than we think." "Most intriguing," Poirot murmured, filing the comment away. He moved on, eavesdropping near the terrace where Colonel Blake argued in hushed tones with Mr. Wren, the solicitor. "Keep your mouth shut, Wren," Blake hissed. "If Ashbourne finds out about the loan, we're both sunk." Wren's reply was inaudible, but his shaking hands betrayed fear. The pivotal moment came when Poirot, lingering near a curtained alcove, overheard a whispered plot. Two figures, a man and a woman, their masks obscuring their identities, spoke in low tones. "During the fireworks," the woman said, "when everyone's distracted. The emerald's in the ballroom, hidden in plain sight. We take it and vanish." "And Thorne?" the man asked. "She's back, sniffing around." "She won't talk," the woman replied, "not after what she's done." Poirot's heart quickened. The emerald in the ballroom? He recalled the chandeliers, their crystals glinting like gems. Could one hide the true emerald? Before he could pursue the thought, the orchestra struck up a waltz, and the conspirators melted into the crowd. As the ball reached its peak, Lord Ashbourne announced a grand unmasking at midnight. Poirot, sensing the moment was ripe, signalled Hastings. "Mon ami, find Dr. Thorne and keep her in sight. I must speak with Lady Evelyn." He found her near the refreshment table, her green mask askew. "Mademoiselle," he said, dropping his disguise, "a word." I know of your debts, your midnight search, and now a plot to steal the emerald tonight. Speak plainly, or the consequences will be severe." Lady Evelyn's eyes widened, then hardened. "You've been busy, Monsieur Poirot. Yes, I owe money, debts, from bad investments. Someone's been blackmailing me, saying they'd expose me unless I helped find the emerald. But I'm not a thief." "Who is this blackmailer?" Poirot pressed. She hesitated, then whispered, "I don't know their face, but they left notes, signed with a labyrinth symbol." The unmasking began, masks falling to reveal familiar faces. But as the crowd cheered, Poirot's gaze locked on Dr. Thorne, who slipped toward the terrace. Hastings followed, but a sudden explosion of fireworks lit the sky, drawing all eyes. In the chaos, Poirot saw a figure, masked and cloaked, dart toward a chandelier, a small tool in hand. The plot was unfolding, and the emerald was within reach. Poirot's little grey cells raced, weaving the night's revelations into a pattern. The masquerade had exposed alliances and betrayals, but the true mastermind remained hidden, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Chapter 12. The Final Riddle. The fireworks over Verdant Hall painted the night sky in bursts of crimson and gold, their thunderous cracks masking the undercurrent of tension in the ballroom. Hercule Poirot stood amid the masked revellers, his sharp eyes tracking the cloaked figure who had darted toward a chandelier during the masquerade's climax. The overheard plot, Dr. Clara Thorne's furtive movements, the emerald shard, and the labyrinth's secrets had converged, pointing to a single truth. The emerald was hidden in plain sight, and someone was about to claim it. With Captain Hastings shadowing Thorne on the terrace, Poirot moved swiftly, his little grey cells assembling the final pieces of the puzzle. The ballroom was a whirl of motion, guests still caught in the euphoria of the unmasking. Poirot approached the central chandelier, its crystals sparkling like a constellation. He recalled the sundial's riddle: seek the heart where shadows meet, beneath the gaze of heaven's seat, and the conspirator's whisper about the emerald being in the ballroom. The chandelier, suspended high above, was the room's focal point, its crystals catching every light. Could one be the emerald disguised among its fellows? He signalled a footman, requesting a ladder under the pretence of inspecting a loose fixture. As the ladder was positioned, Poirot climbed, his movements precise despite the crowd's curious stares. Examining the chandelier, he noticed one crystal, larger than the rest, with a faint green hue, and a vine-like etching matching the brass. Key's design. His fingers closed around it, feeling its weight, too heavy for mere glass. "Mon Dieu," he whispered, "the emerald, hidden in the heart of light." Before he could remove it, a shout rang out from the terrace. "Stop her!" It was Hastings, wrestling with Dr. Thorne, who had tried to flee. The guests surged toward the commotion, and Poirot descended, clutching the crystal. But as he reached the floor, a figure lunged from the crowd. Colonel Percival Blake, his face twisted with desperation, a knife gleaming in his hand. "Give it to me, Poirot!" Blake snarled, slashing at the air. "It's mine!" Poirot dodged, his agility surprising for his fastidious frame. "Colonel, your greed betrays you," he said, his voice calm but commanding. "The emerald is not yours to claim." Lord Ashbourne and Mr. Grayson restrained Blake, who struggled, shouting about debts and betrayal. The ballroom fell silent, all eyes on Poirot. He held up the crystal, its green fire catching the light. "This," he said, "is the emerald of Verdant Hall, hidden not in the maze but here, where none thought to look. But its discovery is only the beginning." Hastings escorted Thorn inside, her mask gone, her face defiant. Lady Evelyn, Mrs. Langley, and Mr. Wren watched, their expressions a mix of fear and fascination. Poirot's gaze swept the room, his mind weaving the final riddle. The maze's ciphers, the shard, the passage, and the blackmail notes signed with a labyrinth symbol. The emerald was found, but the mastermind behind the crimes, Thorn's disappearance, the staged clues, and now Blake's desperate act, remained. "Mesdames et messieurs," Poirot began, his voice cutting through the tension, "the labyrinth has led us here, but its true puzzle is one of human motive. The emerald was a lure, a spark to ignite greed. Someone orchestrated this chaos, using the maze's legend to manipulate us all." He turned to Thorn. "Dr. Thorn, your return was too convenient, your story of the passage too neat. Your plants, hidden in the maze, are not mere specimens, but a fortune in rare species smuggled for profit. You vanished to protect your secret, staging the scarf, and screamed to divert suspicion." Thorn's eyes flashed, but she remained silent. Poirot continued, facing Blake. "Colonel, your debts drove you to seek the emerald, but you were a pawn, fed clues by another. The glove, the knife, crude attempts to seize the prize." Finally, he addressed Lady Evelyn. "Mademoiselle, your blackmail notes were real, but you were not the victim. You wrote them, using the labyrinth symbol to sow fear, hoping to flush out the emerald's location. But you underestimated your accomplices." A gasp rippled through the crowd as Poirot revealed the crystal's etching, a final clue pointing to the true mastermind. The emerald was hidden by Sir Mortimer, but its legend was revived by one who knew its power to destroy. The final riddle is not where, but who. As he prepared to name the culprit, Blake lunged again, knocking the crystal from Poirot's hand. It skittered across the floor, and in the ensuing chaos, a figure darted forward, intent on claiming it and destroying the evidence of their crimes. Chapter 13. The Triumph of the Little Grey Cells. The ballroom of Verdant Hall was frozen in a moment of chaos. The emerald, a flawless green crystal, skittering across the polished floor, as Colonel Percival Blake's desperate lunge disrupted Hercule Poirot's revelation. The guests gasped, their eyes darting between the gem and the figures poised to seize it. Poirot, his composure unshaken, raised a hand, his voice ringing with authority. "Mesdames et messieurs, remain where you are. The truth will not be lost to this pandemonium." Captain Hastings, quick to act, tackled Blake, pinning him to the ground as Lord Reginald Ashbourne retrieved the emerald, clutching it with trembling hands. Poirot's grey eyes swept the room, locking onto the figure who had darted forward in the chaos. Mr. Victor Grayson, the gemologist, his face pale beneath his unmasked guise. The little grey cells, ever vigilant, had reached their conclusion, and now, in this final act, Poirot would unravel the labyrinth of lies. He gestured for the guests to gather, the emerald now safely in his possession. "The maze of Verdant Hall," he began, his voice steady, is not merely of hedges, but of human greed, deception, and cunning. The emerald, hidden in the chandelier, was the heart of this mystery, but its true power was to expose the motives of those who sought it. Let us now reveal the mastermind. Poirot turned to Dr. Clara Thorne, whose defiant gaze faltered. Madame Thorne, your disappearance was no accident. You staged it, using the maze's passage to hide your smuggling operation. Rare plants worth a fortune on the black market. The scarf, the scream. These were diversions to keep us from your true purpose. But you knew of the emerald, none. Your notebook's green heart was not the maze's centre, but this very crystal which you hoped to claim. Thorne's lips parted, but Poirot pressed on, facing Colonel Blake, still restrained by Hastings. Colonel, your debts made you a pawn. You sought the emerald to settle your accounts, guided by clues you believed came from chance. The glove, the mazes, riddles. But these were planted, were they not, by one who knew your desperation? Blake's eyes widened, but Poirot's gaze shifted to Lady Evelyn. Mademoiselle, your blackmail notes, signed with the labyrinth symbol, were a clever ruse. You claimed to be a victim, but you wrote them to manipulate others, stirring fear to flush out the emerald's location. Yet you too were misled, your greed blinding you to the true orchestrator. Finally, Poirot turned to Mr. Grayson, whose nervous fidgeting had escalated. Monsieur Grayson, you arrived late, claiming a delayed train, but your knowledge of gems was no coincidence. You are the architect of this scheme. A gemologist, yes, but also a descendant of Sir Mortimer's steward, privy to the family's secrets. You revived the emerald's legend, planting the anonymous letter that summoned me here. Why? To create chaos, to pit these players against each other, so you could claim the emerald unnoticed. Grayson laughed, a brittle sound. Preposterous! Poirot, you've no proof. Poirot produced the silk scrap from the midnight intruder, its emerald hue glinting. This, monsieur, was not Lady Evelyn's, as I first suspected, but yours. A fragment from your cloak, torn in the library. The map you sought bore your own mark, the keystone note written in your hand, and the labyrinth symbol on the letter. It matches the seal on your ring. A family heirloom, non? Grayson's face crumpled, his hand clutching the ring. I only wanted what was mine. My ancestor hid the emerald for Mortimer, but we were never rewarded. I studied the maze, the riddles. I earned it. Poirot shook his head. You earned nothing but deceit. You manipulated Thorne's smuggling, Blake's debts, Evelyn's greed, even Ashbourne's fear of the curse. You staged Thorne's disappearance, leaving clues to distract us, and planned to steal the emerald during the ball. But you underestimated the little grey cells. Lord Ashbourne, clutching the emerald, looked stricken. Grayson, why? Grayson lunged, but Hastings and Blake restrained him. Poirot continued, addressing the room. The emerald is safe, and the curse is broken, not by magic, but by truth. Dr. Thorne will answer for her smuggling, Colonel Blake for his violence, Lady Evelyn for her schemes. But Grayson, you are the heart of this labyrinth, and your greed has trapped you. As the local constabulary, summoned by Hastings, arrived to take Grayson and the others into custody, Poirot handed the emerald to Ashbourne. Keep it safe, monsieur, or destroy it. Its brilliance is a heavy burden. Later, as Poirot and Hastings prepared to depart Verdant Hall, the maze loomed in the dawn light, its secrets laid bare. "A fine mess, Poirot," Hastings said, shaking his head. "How do you do it?" Poirot smiled, adjusting his hat. "The little grey cells, mon ami, they navigate any labyrinth, for they see what others cannot, the truth beneath the lies." With a final glance at the estate, he stepped into the waiting motor car, leaving Verdant Hall and its emerald to fade into memory.